Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 66 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real-life fossil counterparts. So today we've got a very interesting assortment as per usual, but we're starting off with a really big pack. So if you guys know Raptor, who's made quite a few wonderful mods, but also Castle Log and Trippy28, they've all joined forces to create the Australia Dinosaur Pack. So this pack includes 6 different dinosaurs known from Australia, 3 herbivores, 3 carnivores. Most of them are not that famous, though there is one famous one that we'll obviously see. And plus other assorted mods that we'll get into. So we're going to be starting off. So first 6 animals in this pack are all done as the Australian Dinosaur Pack by Raptor, Castle Log, and Trippy28. So let's have a look at Gallanosaurus. Look at you, little friend. So this is Gallanosaurus. So Gallanosaurus, which means gallon lizard. So a gallon is an upturned like type of boat. It's where it gets its name as the upper jawbone kind of resembles that. These guys are a basal ornithopod from the Ornithite Formation in the Gippsland region of Victoria, Australia. And the type species and only species is Gallanosaurus dorsier. So the original specimen was found at the Flat Rocks locality in 2008 by paleontologist Gary Cool, and is actually found on the same site as the closely related Quantasaurus, which was named 20 years earlier in 1999, where it was found. So the rocks that this guy was found is estimated to be about 125 million years old, or the Ladbamian stage of the age of Cretaceous, and it's found at the Burong Marine National Park, which is interesting. And at this time, Australia would have been at a much higher latitude, so it would have been within the Antarctic Circle. So a lot colder, well, not necessarily a lot colder, but a lot more south than is today. And probably had, like with being so close to the poles, long days and short nights, so the world wasn't as cold. And it was catalogued by the Melbourne Museum and studied by Matthew Seherney, and then was described as Gallanosaurus dozier in 2019 with the paper, and is the 5th named ornithopod to come from Victoria, which includes things like Leaellynasaura, Quantasaurus, and Discolovator. Let's have that. So the specific name, the generic name, refers to the gallon, which is a type of large sailing ship, and saurus, so it's a gallon lizard, because the maxilla, or the bone where it's mostly found from, looks like the upturned hull of a gallon. And the specific name Dorsier comes from in recognition of Dora Seret's villas, with her effort to kind of work out the geology and the taphonomic work around the Flat Rocks vertebral locality. So it's kind of a way to honour her. The holotype is known from a complete maxilla and part dentary, and there are some other specimens that have been referred to that include teeth and things like that. Not much in terms of the body, but mostly just head. So, being a small ornithopod, they would have been small bipedal animal, and there are some synapomorphies or tapomorphies that kind of define it, that they're really, really intricate, so I won't go into that too much. And there's a small degree of variation as well within them with all these specimens. So there's some traits that have been do not differ with age, and it's just they actually have sexual dimorphism or potentially maybe subspecies living in the same habitat or over time, because obviously this is all these specimens would have existed over time. So potentially could have been variation within the population over time, eventually like subspecies, or potentially sexual dimorphism. But really, you can't really test that. It's really just a hypothesis. And in terms of its phylogeny, it is in the group called Elasmosaura, or Asmosaura, which is a group with a lot of other Australian kind of ornithopods, which is quite interesting. It's fragmentary as well. And it's thought to be possible that it actually may be the same species or maybe a synonym of Quantasaurus rather than a distinct taxon. But the entries suggest that they may actually be quite different, though that is something that has been put out there. But the most recent taxonomy is Elasmosaurus, so they'd be related to things like Talankan, Merographosaurus from South America, Gallanosaurus, Leaellynasaura, and things like that. So yeah, really, really cool animal. Nice little guy, and I love the little look at him. It's definitely a cutie, and nice to see some Australian animals. Even though I don't like Australians, I do like Australia. So really, really awesome. Oh, I don't actually dislike Australians. It's just a joke. But a really nice place with awesome animals and great fossils as well. So this is a really cool fossil that we're getting here. So we're going to let these guys run off and do their thing. Next up, we've got the famous one. So we've got Leaellynasaura. Let's have a look at what's one with a nice color. I like this one's colors. We'll have a look at this one. Oh no, I like this one's. This one's got like a little bit of a basic color. Little cute little guy, little goober. So this is Leaellynasaura. Oh well, look at you. You look better positioning. All right. This is Leaellynasaura. So Leaellynasaura, which means Leollin's lizard. These guys were small herbivorous ornithischian, so bird-hip dinosaur from the Aptian stage of the early Cretaceous between 118 to 110 million years ago. So a little bit younger in age than Giganosaurus. So it was first described in Dinosaur Cove, Australia, and is only known from the only known species is Leaellynasaura McGrapha, and it was described in 1989 after and was named after Leon Rich, who was the daughter of the Australian paleontologists couple Tom Rich and Patricia Vickers Rich, who discovered it. So that's cool. And the specific name Arigama translates to friendly writing, as it honours both the Friends of the Museum of Victoria and the National Geographic Society as a support of Australian paleontology, which is quite cool. In terms of its body and things like that, it was a relatively small dinosaur, probably about 3 feet long, and is known from several specimens, including 2 nearly complete skeletons and 2 fragmentary skulls. However, it's argued that, unlike more advanced ornithischians, they didn't have ossified tendons in their tail, which means they could have been quite movable with their tails. And this is also noteworthy because they have the longest tail believed to be for body size compared to any other ornithischian. So their tails is about 3 times the length of their body, which is really interesting, and has more tail vertebrae than any other ornithischian except for some hadrosaurs. However, there has been some fossil material that suggests that these long-tailed specimens may belong to a different animal and not the same as Leaellynasaura. But it's kind of, we really don't know because there's so little fossils. But still cool regardless. So early on in history, it was actually described as a hypsilophodont or a primitive iguanodontian or primitive ornithischian, but recent studies have not actually shown a consensus, with some analyses kind of showing it to be a non-iguanodontian orthopod or a Bethel neothischian. But most recent studies, as I mentioned, the same one that described Gallinosaurus, suggests that Gallinosaurus is sister to Leaellynasaura, and kind of considered as all the same in the Lasmosaura, which is a bunch of South American and Australian early small ornithopods. So very similar as well. They were an Antarctic polar dinosaur, so during this time Victoria would have been within the Arctic Circle, and although the latitude is very cold today, it was much warmer during the Cretaceous, but because of the Earth's tilt, they still had the long summers and the long days in the summer and the short days in the winter. So that would have been a thing as well. So it's very likely that due to the latitude, they may have had times where the sun may not have risen for weeks or months of the year. And that means they would have lived in the dark for a lot of times during the year. And skull fragments actually have been interpreted to show that Leaellynasaura may have had large eyes and potentially large optic lobes to be able to live in these low-light conditions. However, that is believed to be more interpreted because it was potentially a young individual that had these big eyes, rather than a low light adaptation. But still very possible that they could have had big eyes to be able to see in those low light conditions and maybe even hibernate, things like that. And as you can see here, it's kind of got a feathery texture, like a lot of basal neornithischians may have had feathers to basically allow them to keep warm during that time. Even though it was much warmer than it is now, it still could have got cold down there. So they might need something a little, and plus they're small animals, so they need to keep warm somehow. But yeah, definitely a big fan of these little cuties. How can you not love these little guys? Nice little guys. I'd really love to see this guy have like proper feathers as well. That would be a cool thing in the future. Some proper feathers on these little guys. I'm sure someone else might make one with some feathers. But yeah, really, really cute. So there's Leaellynasaura. Oh, where are we now? Oh, there we are. So you run off and do your thing. And then we've got our last herbivore. We've got Fostoria or Fostoria. So Fostoria, and it's doing that again. Oh, of course it does. Anyway, let's have a look at this guy. We'll have a look at you. You like your pattern. So this is Fostoria Dehil Manguli. Oh, it's kind of really hard one to say. So Fostoria was named after Robert Foster, who discovered the type locality and bones. And the specific name, Dehulugulmi, means sheepyard in the languages of the Urlalaway and Gamalaway peoples of Australia, so a bunch of indigenous aborigines. It's a genus of iguanodontian ornithopod coming from the Grimben Creek Formation in New South Wales, in Australia, and was described in 2019. So the fossils of this guy have been classified as an iguanodontia, which is describing authors as put in a matrix, and it's found to be most basal to the clade, and comprises closely related to Abyssiniana, Muttaburrasaurus, and Telacan, which are both Australian and South American relatives, so a really basal clade from Gondwana, which is interesting as well. However, there have been some recent studies covering these guys suggest that it may have been within Raphodontia, showing features with derived raphodonts, like things like Zalmoxes that live in Europe, so that's another very interesting thing as well. That could be convergence, it's another thing as well. But the history of discovery, it was actually founded in 1984, where Bob Foster, an opal miner, actually discovered it in Lightning Ridge. And Foster originally thought it was the fossil of a hoof belonging to a horse. And then Foster eventually found so many fossils in his mind that he went to find paleontologists at the Australian Museum at Sydney. And then after they had a look at the fossils, paleontologist Alexander Ritchie, with some army reservists, actually travelled to the mine to get more fossils. And these fossils were prepared but remained unstudied until 2015, with Foster in the early 21st century removed the finds from the private opal museum and exhibited them there, and then later donated to the Australian Opal Centre in Lightning Ridge, and where they remain to this day. So a little bit of history there, and a very cool dinosaur, potentially a close relative or early relative, depending on the age. Yep, of Muttaburrasaurus. Very, very cool guy. So I'll let him run off and do his thing. Come on, you run off and do your thing. Don't want you hanging around the... Alright, so next up, we've got another cool guy. We're moving on to the carnivores now. So we've got Ozraptor. So this is little Ozraptor. Where is a good one? Here's a good one here. So this is little Ozraptor. Ozraptor means Australian thief, because Oz is another slang word for Australia. They're a genus of possibly Albertosaurid theropod from the Middle Jurassic of the Colorado Sandstone of Australia. So while the other species like Leaellynasaura and Fostoria and those guys were around when Australia was pretty much separate from most of the continents, like I think maybe except Antarctica and New Zealand, these guys were around when Gondwana was pretty much just splitting off. So this is the oldest one so far. It's known from fragmentary remains. So when it was first discovered, it was found in 1967 by a group of 4 12-year-old Scotch college schoolboys who found the fossil in the Bringer Ridge railway cutting site near Gilton, and which was shown to Professor Rex Prude from the University of West Australia. And he had a cast made, and then he sent it to the British Museum of Natural History, who thought it was an extinct turtle, but then re-evaluated in the 1990s after being pricked out of the rock by John Albert Long and Ralph Molnar, actually showed that this guy was actually the shin bone of a theropod. And then 1998, it was described as Ozraptor sibolti, which the generic name Dryza Aussies, which is a nickname for Australians. If you're Oz or Australia's Aussies, so you're Aussie, you're an Australian. And Raptor, Latin is Raptor, which means Caesar. So Aussie Raptor, Australian thief, even though all Australians are thieves. And the specific name honors the fictional character, the swift running thief and archer Saboti from the movie Conan and the Barbarian. So a little bit of pop culture in there as well. The holotype as well is found with collar stonestone and dates to the Middle Bajonian about 169 million years ago, and it consists of the distal or lower end of the left tibia, and together with Rheitosaurus. By the way, I love the Rheitosaurus specimen. I saw it when I went to SVP in 2019, and it was absolutely beautiful. I love that specimen. There's some beautiful fossils in Australia, and it's actually one of the oldest known Australian dinosaurs, along with the Rheitosaurus, which is a big sauropod. So the specimen itself is about 8 centimeters long and about 4 centimeters wide at the lower end. And from these measurements, it was estimated the bone was about 17 to 20 centimeters, or about 6 to 7 inches, which means the whole animal in life would have been about 2 meters long. And there's a few 3 distinguishing features that kind of suggest what it is. This is a Balisaur. So only known from one partial leg bone, it doesn't mean you can find out much about it, but they can find a little bit. So in 1998, they could not determine whether it was more than just a theropod. However, in 2004, Thomas Holtz thought it could be a member of Avaceratopsia. And then another study suggests it may have been an Abelisaur because of a specific groove on it. And then classified as one, it would be one of the oldest known Abelisaurs, and we don't have any Abelisaurs from Australia. However, they've gone to conclude that none of these defining features actually are limited to Albertosaurus. Therefore, Ozraptor can be best classified as a theropod. So we just know it's a theropod. We don't really have much in the way of saying anything else, just because it's so fragmentary. But see, it's still a really cool animal. I still am surprised that it got named because of just how little it is on it. But still really, really cool. Hope we find more specimens of Ozraptor these days. Hopefully clear out the taxonomy. Because if it isn't a Belisaurid, or even a Noasaurid potentially, that does change a lot about what we know about Australian paleontology, because we don't have any Abelisaurs from Australia. For most of the big predators were Megaraptorans, so that would be very interesting to find out, genuinely. So that's pretty cool. So we can let them run off and do their thing. You can see they're already panicking. So next up, we have got Timimus, which is another Australian one, a second to last Australian one. So let's release. This is an interesting guy, isn't he? Oh, and that does it again. Yay. Alright. Well, let's have a look at these wonderful guys. So this is Timimus. So Timimus is a genus of small Silurian dinosaur that came from the early Cretaceous of Australia. And it was first initially described as Ornithomimosaur, but then it was described as a Tyrannosaurid, so we'll get into that. But first we're going to go over the discovery. So in 1991, there were 2 femora that were found, one from adult and one from juvenile, that were found in Dinosaur Cove in East Australia, and it was described as the type species Timimus hermanni, which is named and described by Thomas Rich and his wife, who described Leaellynasaura in 1993-1994, and it name means Tim's mimic, as a way to contribute to the both discoveries of his son Timothy Rich and paleontologist Tim Flannery with the Latin mimus, so it's a Tim mimic, which is interesting because he's such a good paleontologist, very clever. And then mimus is a reference to the affinity of ornithomimosaurs, which was believed to be. And then the specific name honors John Herbin, who for many years kind of helped with the project. So the holotype itself was found in the Umela stone in the upper stage of early Cretaceous in about 106 million years ago, similar age to Leaellynasaura, and contains a left femur from an adult individual, so the holotype was found. And then there have been some, I believe, that have already been described. So I commented that while it would have been more ideal to have a more complete specimen, it's highly unlikely that further material of Timimus would be found, because of the limited nature of the sites to be spotted in the area. And the holotype is said to have characteristics of a lot of ornithomimosaurs. And then a second one was found that was a paratype, which is found to be a juvenile, and was likely unrelated to elementary, and suggests that it may actually have an intermediate Maniraptorum, so it could be a different animal instead of Timimus. But some vertebrae have been referred to this guy as well. It's kind of hard because they're all based on one bone. It's kind of hard to figure out who's who and which is which is a little bit annoying. Maybe paleontologists should actually name animals when they've got more stuff to name them from and have diagnostic features, but hey-ho. We can't change the past. Anyway, the holotype thigh bone itself is about 44 centimeters long, and for this, the total length of the animals has been extrapolated to be about 2.5 meters. and its slenderness seems to suggest it would have been a light animal like this. The paratype specimen is about 19.5 centimeters long, and seems to has a lot of traits very similar to the Dinosaur. The adult specimen is estimated to be about 4 meters long and about 200 kilograms, but the younger one's believed to be a bit smaller. And as we talk about its phylogeny, it was originally described as I mentioned ornithomimid, and it was weird because we don't really have any ornithomimids from Gondwana, and it was proof that there was a group that was indeed present in the southern hemisphere, and it may have even originated from there because it would have been one of the oldest. However, that was doubted by Thomas Holtz, and then it was brought on to be Nomen Dubian because we just don't know what more of it is other than Coelurosaur. But there was a 2012 study that found it to be a valid Tyrannosaurid, and that's also suggested by Delcourt in 2018. So there's a couple studies that actually suggested it was a Tyrannosaurid, and very interesting. So by Tyrannosaurid, that could potentially include Megaraptorans, depending on who you ask. Oh, they would have been very basal. It wouldn't have been like a Tyrannosaurid as in like T-Rex. It would have been more similar to things like Stokesosaurus, Guanlong, those kind of animals. So it could be very basal, which makes sense. So it would have been, that's kind of what's suggested for this guy. And the habitat of this guy, very similar to Leaellynasaura. So it would live polar forests with mild summers but cold winters due to being so close to the South Pole. And they've actually, an expert that actually looked at the microstructure of the bones showed that they have different bone histology. So the Ornithischian showed, or Leaellynasaura, showed that they have a constant rate of bone deposition, while the Coelurosaur Timimus actually has a cynical pattern of bone formation. So it actually suggests that Timimus may have actually either hibernated or just kind of slowed down its growth during the winter months. That's interesting. And there's another possible form found in Victoria as well. So it's very possible that we may have more specimens of this in the future as long as we can get it properly described and everything. So that's another really cool one. Definitely a big fan. So we can let you run off and do your thing now. So you guys are finished. So we've got the last animal of the pack and the biggest. So we have got Raptor, which is a very interesting one. It's just Raptor. So here we've got Raptor, and it does it again. So this is a very interesting dinosaur. I like that we have a pack so we can talk about animals that live together. So this is Raptor. So this is a genus of theropod dinosaur from the Grimmen Creek Formation in New South Wales, dated to the Aptian-Timonian stage of about 105 to 96 million years ago. So from the same place as Fostoria. And its type name is Raptor ornitholestes and was described by Frederick von Huch in 1932. So the holotype and only known specimen is found from a single left hand bone, which was discovered in 1905 near Woolston in the Lightning Ridge. The fossil was also opalized, which is really interesting. And the generic name is actually quite problematic because he didn't really give a name like etymology for raptor, but raptor obviously means like thief. And it very rarely means in medieval Latin like violator. So one possible interpretation, it could be the Latin to plunder or raptor, and then mistaken for the word to actually exist as plunderer. But it could be just a simple misspelling as well, but it's how it spells raptor is not the same as raptor as you have in like a velociraptor or Utahraptor. And then its specific name means ornitholestes, resembling ornitholestes, which is a small dinosaur from the Jurassic in Morrison. But we didn't have much in way of Megaraptorans and things then, so it's been reclassified since then. And the remains of a Megaraptorid named Lightning Claw were discovered in the opal field southwest of Lightning Ridge and are thought to be the same material, so this is what's probably more it's based on. So it's very likely a Megaraptoran, which are a very big group of Australian carnivores, like Australovenator is a great example, that had big arms to be able to hunt prey and these long snouts. And their taxonomy is a little bit debated, though they could eventually be related to Tyrannosaurs or maybe Carcharodontosaurs, which is interesting as well. So the bone itself is about at least 7 centimeters long, and this manual element actually shows the process it shares with Ornitholestes, where it gets its name. And if Raptor was built like Australovenator, it actually would have been quite big, about 9 meters long, have been estimated. So up there with like Maip, so my 9 to 10 meters, so a really big, potentially big animal, though most likely may have been a little bit smaller. The type specimen was originally described from metacarpal 1, and it actually was found to be similar to the bone of a Virasaur, and it thought to be potentially Silurosaurian, like Nebuchadnezzarus. But with the discovery of Australovenator, it seems that this was much likely more Megaraptoran, and in fact, they actually don't really differ that much in terms of their arms, so they very likely could be the same thing. In fact, Australovenator and Raptor differ only from some more details, and some have actually considered Raptor a dubious genus because of its fragmentary nature. However, found differences between the hand bones of Raptor and Australovenator actually suggest that they were different, and there actually should be there's actually separated potentially by 10 million years of evolution, so they're very unlikely to be the same thing. And Raptor has also been synonymized with Walgetasuchus, which is a theropod dinosaur from the same formation, which is known from a caudal vertebrae, which identified can't be proven. So it's really, people shouldn't be naming things off of one thing because it means you have to find the exact same bone for the next animal to identify it. But another really cool animal regardless. Nice to see some bigger animals. You love our Megaraptorans. So we're going to let you run off and do your thing. Raptor. So this Australian pack, as I mentioned, was done by NetRaptor, Castlelog, and Trippy28. All did a wonderful job giving us a very interesting assortment of Australian beasties. I do love Australians. I know I make jokes about Australians, but I do love them, and I do love Australian culture, and I do love the fossils and the wildlife and everything. I've got some family over in Australia. Really, really awesome. So, next up, we have got... this one is done by Definitely Not Dilo, Viral Cyclops, and Game Videos for Life. This is a feathered version of the Cryolophosaurus. Oh, and it happens again. Okay, so I'm going to explain to why this needed an update. So, the version that we see in the OG game, the normal cosmetic, is very much based on a 90s interpretation of Cryolophosaurus. So a lot of those older kind of reconstructions make it look a lot more like an Allosaur. But more recent evidence suggests it is a lot more like a Dilophosaurus in terms of its relation. It's actually quite closely related to, it's a tetaneuron. So a little bit more basal sometimes. There are some studies that kind of mix about, but it seems to be the most recent taxonomy suggests it's a basal neotheropod and related to things like Dilophosaurus. So that's kind of who its kind of closest relatives are considered to be. So, in light of that, this has also changed a lot to better fit Dilophosaurus anatomy, and plus Dilophosaurus actually got a huge makeover in 2020 as well. It was properly described, so it was redescribed, and it was not like the little one that you see in Jurassic Park. Much bigger, much bulkier than also originally thought. It would have been like the T-Rex of the early Jurassic of its time, so a really, really cool animal. And you can see here some of the changes they made to the face here. Very, very big, round, like oval-shaped face with the notch in there as well. More similar to Dilophosaurus. Big, big arms. Also lots of feathers, which actually came out rather nicely. So this guy is found from Antarctica, so even during that time it would have been only found around 650 kilometers from the South Pole. So it would have been cold, but maybe not. It was temperate, maybe similar to like modern Chile, with temperatures about 17 to 18 degrees. But it wouldn't have gone much below freezing, even most extremely, though inland it may have. And found in the Hansen Formation. Lived with a few really cool animals like other sauropodomorphs, some small synapsids, we actually know a lot about the habitat as well, because we have lots of conifer fossils and plant fossils and insect fossils as well. And suggests that these guys would have been quite seasonal, and the most comparable habitats to today would have been southern Chile or the forests of the North Island of New Zealand, where I live. So I kind of live in an analogous habitat to Cryolophosaurus, which is interesting. So yeah, a really, really cool animal. So we can see it's been changed to fit much more the Dilophosaurian anatomy, if it's more like the modern interpretation of Dilophosaurus, rather than the old kind of interpretation of being more like an Allosaurid. And then we can see that, and also just much nicer colors as well. We got rid of that really spiky, edgy 90s integument and given a lot of feathers. So it probably would have been a little bit cooler. We don't know much. This is something that come up with feathers a lot. We do have dinosaurs like Kulindadromeus and Psittacosaurus that potentially had feathers, so that suggests that feathers may have been basal to dinosaurs, or even pycnofibers may actually be the same thing as feathers, so maybe Ornithodira, the group that includes pterosaurs and dinosaurs, may have had feathers ancestrally. So it's very much a kettle of fish. It's whether they evolved independently or came from the same common ancestor. We really don't have the fossils to say, but it is possible that pretty much all dinosaurs in some shape or form could have had feathers. At least ancestrally, and some may have lost it ancestrally, like T-Rex is a great example, big sauropods and Kylosaurs. So it's very possible that they either lost them or didn't have them in the first place, or they evolved independently. We just don't have the fossils in the sample size to prove it. So this feathered Cryolophosaurus does fit of what we know, potentially. Alright, speculation. And I've got to say, I do love the colours on it. I love the feathers. Really adds a nice texture to it. I love the updates and changes to the colours as well, and I love how they've done the crest. So Cryolophosaurus is also nicknamed like Elvis, the Elvisaurus, because it kind of looks like Elvis, or Elliot, which is quite cool. Really, really cool animal's nickname is like Elvis. But yeah, another really nice paleo edit. Definitely not Dilo. Did definitely do a great job with this guy. So yeah, very, very awesome. I am going to let these guys run out. I don't want them to spook my other dinosaurs. So I'm going to let them really run off. So yeah, really, really nice one. If you want a little bit more paleo accurate Cryolophosaurus. So next up, we have got Avaceratops. So this guy is a little cutie. Let's pick you because you look the nicest. So this is Avaceratops, a very, very cute little ceratopsian. So they're a genus of small ceratopsian that came from the late Campanian during the late Cretaceous period and is found in northwestern United States, with most of its fossils coming from the Judith River Formation. So the first remains of this guy were found by Eddie Cole in the Judith River Formation of Montana in 1981, and the land of the Careless Creek Ranch, owned by Arthur G. Lawrence, who was a rancher. And they were preserved, scattered throughout remains of prehistoric stream bed, and is likely buried in a sandbar. And then was first displayed in Cole's fossil shop, and then in 1981, Peter Dodson, who in 1982 visited, actually kind of brought additional bones. And then was formally described in 1986 by Dodson as Avaceratops lamensi, and was the first ceratopsid actually named since Pachyrhinosaurus in 1950. So the genus name was given after Ava Cole, it was Eddie's wife. So he named after his wife, Avaceratops, and the species, if it honors the Lamas family, whose the land was owned by them, that it was found. And then there was actually another one, Leaellynasaura, but was actually thought to be a pleurid, referred to several people. However, they changed it to be Lasumi, which is instead of Monolycosordozumi as well. So the holotype itself is a partial skeleton. We can do a skull, left lower jaw, vertebrae, shoulder girdle, things like that. And actually might have actually represented a subadult or juvenile individual, but actually believed it is actually almost full grown, so it actually is quite a small dinosaur comparatively. And Kenneth Carpenter made a reconstruction of the skull. As you can see here, it looks really, really cute. And then in 1993, there was a bit more found, some other specimens, a second skull and a larger individual that had the upper skull and brow horns. However, the assignment of Avaceratops has been questionable because of the chronological position and morphology and lack of intermediary forms. So it may potentially not be, but that's maybe what it be. But Avaceratops itself is actually considered quite small for a ceratopsian. So the size of the holotype is about 2.3 meters, or about 7 feet long, and is actually assumed to have almost obtained adult size. However, the second skull, which may not be Avaceratops but could potentially be, has a length of about 4.2 meters or 14 feet, which puts it more in the range of your typical ceratopsian. So that's 4 to 6 meters, kind of pretty much. And Paul 2008 estimated to be about 4 meters long and 1 ton. And another change to the image was brought as the brow horns. So the first thought the brow horns were rather short. That's purely speculative. And the new horn actually showed that the horn cores had a length of about 25 centimeters, or about 9.8 inches. They've also got quite a distinct frill as well, which is interesting. So you can see the squamosal actually comes out quite to the side, and then it's got this big fan to it as well. And you can look at the different horns, or different like ossicles, if you say that, on the frill there, that kind of give it a distinct pattern. So that a lot of them are really diagnostic by that as well. And actually lacks fenestrae, which is typical of many other genera except Triceratops. So like Triceratops, they may have had a solid frill, which is very uncommon for a lot of actually ceratopsians, which is interesting. So in terms of its classification, who is it related to? It was originally described as a ceratopsian, which is a group of ceratopsians that include Triceratops and all them. Looking at its more recent taxonomy and its research, in terms of the latest research, actually suggested to be in the group Leaellynasaura, which is a group that includes Pseudoceratops, of course, Avaceratops, and a bunch of undescribed taxa, which is interesting. And really cool little guy. And like other ceratopsians, a little herbivore. And during that time, they seem to be feed predominantly on plants like ferns, cycads, and conifers, and using their sharp beaks to break them apart, and living in kind of wet forested habitats. So very similar habitat in the Judith River. That's what we think. Also cool, but yeah, a little bit of confusion. It may have been a little bit bigger than this. This is kind of going with the small interpretation. With a very cute guy. It looks. You could look at it. It looks very much like Pseudoceratops, except without the big bull horns. But yeah, really, really cute little guy. Definitely a big fan. So we're going to let you run off and do your thing. Just get away from here. Oh, of course, I didn't close the park. Don't worry about that. Anyway, we've got our last animal today. So this is the animal finishing off. So Raptor and Trippy did the Avaceratops. And Kulindadromeus was done by Mr. Trudon, who someone commissioned, of course. So Mr. Trudon, back here with a wonderful commission. We've got Kulindadromeus. Let's see. Let's have a look at you, because you have like the one based. Oh no. Let's see. There's a one based on the paleo art, but trying to find a good image of it in the sun. Might try. Yeah, there we are. Oh, no. I'll just pick one. Just pick one. Here, we'll have a look at you. No, we'll have a look at you. I like the colours on this one. But I love the colours on these guys. I just got to say, this one came out rather perfectly. This one was based on the original paleo art, so we'll have a look at this one. Okay. So this is Kulindadromeus. So this is a herbivorous dinosaur, which is based on the Dinosaur from the Middle Jurassic, and was first found in Russia. And you can see it's covered in feathers. It's got proto-feathers. And it's one of the big guys in the argument suggesting that feathers may have been basal to Ornithischia or even Dinosauria as a whole, rather than Coelurosauria than it was often suspected or originally thought. So we'll get into just a little bit more about this guy. So in 2014, the type species of Kulindadromeus zabakiensis, or say that, was described by Pascal Gochev and a bunch of other paleontologists at the time, a bunch of Russian paleontologists. Its generic name comes from the Kalinda site, and so it's the Kalinda site. In classical Greek, Dromaeus means runner, so it's basically the Kalinda runner, and the specific name refers to the Zalakrinsky Krali, where it was found. So the holotype itself was found in the Ujilaka Formation, which dates back to the Middle to Late Jurassic, or the Tithonian stage, so about 68 to 66 million years ago during the Middle Cretaceous, and it consists of a partial skull and lower jaws. And the volcanic ash that was actually found and actually led to this exceptional preservation where you can see all the feathers and things like that. And since 2010, the area has brought considerable attention to fossil material that includes subadult and juvenile individuals. In 2014, there was also Kulindadromeus and Dinosaurs that was also named on this area. And the publication is also based on solid specimens that could be ignored. And the matrix contains 6 skulls and 100 isolated skeletons from 2 bone beds, and each skeleton is thought to be a single morphotype and could contain a single species. So in terms of Kulindadromeus itself, it was a small ornithishkin, as you can kind of see here. It was about 1 to 1.5 meters, or about 3 to 5 feet long, and weighed about 2 kilograms. And like other early in the ornithishkins, it was a runner with short, small head, small forelimbs, long hind limbs, and a long tail, good for running. Descriptions also show there's a lot of variants I think but the really kind of thing that really brings it apart is the tegument. So it shows there were rows of scales on the tail, as you can kind of see here, but then you look at the body, there was also a covering of feather-like structures that went along most of the body. And then until this guy was discovered, it was thought that fossils were only in theropoda, so only theropods, like maybe potentially like Scuromimus, some of those early theropods had feathers on the suraskin line, but the feathers discovered are the 3 types, which added a level of complexity to the evolution of feathers in dinosaurs. And the first type has hair-like filaments, and then you have the dino fudge that's seen in Sinosauropteryx, and then you have the 6 or 7 downwards filaments, which is the 3rd type, and these are present on the arm as well. And what really makes it interesting is that there's also 3 types of scales as well, and there's unlikely these structures of osteoderms, so just big scales as well. They have, as you can see on the tail, there's like overlapping hexagonal scales. So these guys are pretty much like feathered and scaly, which is really, really cool, and it's been really well represented by Mr. Trudon here. And as we'll get into the feathers and stuff, the implications, I'll explain that very easily. So, well, very in depth, because this guy kind of just opened a Pandora's box in terms of dinosaur integument. So according to cladistics, it is a neo-ornithishkin, is sister to Sauropoda, which is, of course, things like Sauropoda, which is ornithopods, ceratopsians, and pachycephalosaurs, so that really big group. And the implications of this little guy of animals like Tenulong, which is a Tenulong is a heterodontosaur, and you have Psittacosaurus, which is ceratopsian. So these 3 species show that proto-feathers could have been seem to be the same structures as you see in your kind of typical dinosaurs and birds today. So that being known, and also within the structures of pycnofibers that are seen in Ornithodira that have shown to pretty much have the same stages as bird feathers, this actually suggests that the ancestors of both potentially Ornithodira, which includes pterosaurs and dinosaurs, or just Dinosauria itself, or potentially wherever it is in the line, were ancestrally scaly. That was originally what was thought, but now it's actually suggested that could be because the ancestors of Ornithodira and ancestors of dinosaurs were all feathery, and then they evolved scales. And we've seen that with birds today. A lot of the birds' scales on their feet are actually re-evolved, scales that have evolved back, feathers have evolved back to be scales. So it's very likely that could have been scales that are kind of like re-evolved, which is interesting as well. So whether these are the same types of feathers that you see on birds or not, they're very similar. It's kind of hard to tell, probably without genetics and things like that, but they look very similar. Could have been convergence. Could have been potentially ancestral. That would be genetics, but we don't have genetics from dinosaurs, which is a little bit sad, or extinct dinosaurs. But really, really cool. It has a lot of implications for people painting dinosaurs. So that's why we had like the feather craze back in the 2010s. We gave ankylosaurs feathers and everything. Well, we've kind of refrained from that a bit. It's still possible that a lot of dinosaurs could have had feathers that we don't know about, and feathers may have been ancestral to dinosaurs. So very interesting kind of implications there. Oh, look at this little guy. Look at him with his little face. Little cutie. Little cutie there. Very, very interesting, I think. We'll look at you then. Okay. So also, Kulindadromeus is actually featured on the coat of arms of Russia's Chernovsky district, where it was discovered, so it's a very point of pride, and tells us a lot about dinosaurs. So yeah, this is our last guy here. Mr. Trudon really did an awesome job with this guy. So I'm going to let you run off and do your thing. I get a run off because there's predators in there. But yeah, really, really awesome job today for everyone. Love Raptor and Trippy8 and definitely not Dilo for the Cryo and Mr. Trudon making a triumphant return with the Kulindadromeus. He's definitely one of the best botters for Jurassic World Evolution 2. So, yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So, yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.